happy that I'm here with you.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, so.
Nos podemos quitar la mascarilla.
With
the mask or without
yes, yes,
with
yeah,
the mask?
but I have already this.
But I can put it along like this.
Then we do it one with sound. Okay?
You look at me.
Of course.
Oh, wait, no, try to say. Another one. Yep. Okay. Done.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I need
everyone at home to the debate Make Her Count for Democracy. My name is Katja Ziska, I'm the PES Women coordinator. And now we have 1 hour of debate. We are very happy you joined. When you're listening, we are in Facebook on the PES Women Facebook page and the PES page. There's also a German translation on the ASF Facebook page. There's also some translation on YouTube in Spanish, French, and German if you want to join there. We have now the debate, and we want also your opinion and your ideas, so comment please with the hashtag #MakeHerCount and the hashtag #ProgressiveForWomen for the all-over event with Courage for Europe that we are hosting today and tomorrow. After the interventions of the hosts, so Zita Gomay, PES Women President, and Maria Neuchel, ASF President, they're going to do their welcome, and then our great moderator from the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, Dr. Stefanie Elias, is going to join us. She's the overall coordinator for gender equality in the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung. It's a German social democratic think tank, and they also do a lot of work on anti-feminism and on the rise of conservative parties. So we're very happy she joined us and is guiding us through the debate. So now please welcome our President Zita Gomay for her opening speech, and I give over. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Hi from Berlin. It's lovely to see you all. And of course, you are on a feminist launch debate in the context of PES conference with Courage for Europe. And of course, as we are in this lovely capital, and I'm very happy that you could all join us remotely for this pretty important exchange, which we are calling Make Her Count Democracy. We have a great online app of political leaders and experts here today, and we will discuss and, of course, reflect on the issues of the interconnection between gender equality, women's rights, and the health of the future of our European democracies. But before we start, I just want to explain our motivation for picking up this pretty important topic. Our International Women's Day this year, PES Women launched a campaign called Make Her Count. It aimed to underline the importance of women's contribution in society and in our economy. We raised awareness of the fact that women for minimum pay and recognition, which the pandemic highlighted especially. Today, we want to extend the topic further, as the conference on the future of Europe has just begun, and we are in the process reflecting how to make Europe more just, equal, I should go further, gender equal, and prosperous. Of course, we in PES Women and ASF, the women organization of SPD, want to call for one simple thing: make women count for the sake of democracy. We are seeing a conservative backlash again, hard-won women's rights and LGBTI rights, and I really would like to show solidarity. That's why I brought my rainbow rose dress on. Anti-gender equality and anti-democratic movements go hand in hand. Therefore, as European social democrats and, of course, feminists, we want to highlight that gender equality and democracy are mutually dependent. That is why this event will analyze the current state of play when it comes to gender equality and democracy. This will bring us a step closer to make her count for the future of Europe. I'm looking forward to today's exchange to awaken new ideas about how to build back better for European future, but is equal and inclusive, with us social democrats leading the way against the far-right forces. Once again, thank you very much for joining today, and now I hand over my great sister, Maria Neuchel, ASF President.
Dear women, a wonderful, wonderful welcome to the PES conference with Courage for Europe, Make Her Count for Democracy, in Berlin or online on the web. As chair of the women's organization of the SPD in Germany, ASF, I'm happy to welcome you as a co-host. We stand here as women always carry more than the half of the work. We always carry more than the half of the children and the world. But never, never, never get half the pay for it. The COVID crisis has shown this once more. The clapping for women, but the crisis money on the other side, mostly for men. This must finally come to the end. Democracy means for us as SPD, S&D and PES Women, democracy means for us every person, every man, every woman has the same value, has the same right for help, the same right for dignity. Every day, and especially in the time of crisis. As social democrats, one thing is certain for us: we fight for gender equality every day. We fight more for gender equality if there is a crisis. Then we have to do more than the double. In crisis, the character of people is open to see. In crisis, the strength of a party shows itself. In crisis shows the honesty of the struggle of women's rights. Dear women, be loud every day. Greeting from Brussels, Maria Neuchel.
A warm welcome from me. I'm Stephanie. I hope you can hear me well. I feel very honored to moderate this high-level feminist lunch talk today. And after hearing two very active women in politics already, I want to give the floor directly to another very active female politician who is with us today in the room. It's Irache Garcia Perez, who also joins us from the studio in Berlin. Irache, the floor is yours, and I would like to invite you to give us your key address. You are the president of the S&D group in Europe, and also the secretary for the EU of the Socialist Workers' Party in Spain, PSOE. The floor is yours.
Pleasure.
Now, now it's okay.
Wow.
Much better. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Sita, for inviting me to participate in this important event for us, for our political family, and for us as a socialist women. I'm very proud to be part of our family, and we are building a strong alternative in the European Union to respond near to the citizens. And this is a very important issue for us. As you know, the European Union has been talking about citizens Europe for many years, and now we have finally this conference on the future of Europe that must actually deliver on it. You know that we had to start 1 year ago, but the COVID-19 pandemic did it impossible, and after we need to wait a lot of time to discuss with other institutions about this structure of the conference. But finally, we could launch this conference 1 month ago. You know that I'm shocked to find myself to be the only woman representing in the executive board of the Conference on Future of Europe as the European Parliament. And I think that it's a clear signal. We need to improve our position in all institutions, in all levels, because if we are the half of the population, we need to be represented at the same level. And this is why we, Socialists and Democrats, want to lead the transition to a new way of doing politics, a feminist approach to power as a shared responsibility and co-ownership. A true exercise in democracy demands openness to institutional change. And today is an important day because yesterday, finally, we could vote in the European Parliament important report about the reproductive and sexual health. And finally, with a lot of difficulties, we could win an important position for us as a women, an important position for the human rights, because we could include the abortion as a human right in Europe. It's important step, and I am very proud for our political family to work together with unity to have this exceptional report. And we did it together, feminists with our colleagues who are men but are feminists. And this is very, very important. As a political family, we need to lead this transformation, this transition. We need to list a feminist Europe. We can be proud for the past. The Social Democrats built Europe with important values like equality, but now we have big challenges to build this feminist Europe, and I'm sure that with your work and your cooperation, we will do it an extraordinary job in this conference on the future of Europe, in our European Parliament, and with our national party at the different levels. I'm very happy to be here today in Berlin. I know that we have strong challenges in this moment in Germany, and you know that you can count with us, with all women in our political family to build this alternative. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Neil Datta. I'm the Secretary of EPF, and I'm delighted to have been asked to make a contribution to Make Her Count for Democracy workshop. I'd like to start by recalling a European Parliament resolution that dates back to February 2019 that was focusing on the backlash in women's rights and gender equality in the EU. Back then, that
technical issues sometimes, so there was a video just now that should be sent to you later. First of all, Irache, thank you very much for your very engaged words here. And from what you just mentioned, I think there is more hope on the horizon. But as a women leader, and sometimes the only female leader in these political realities, how do you see now the future for this kind of a feminist Europe that you just mentioned? How will the Social Democrats, how will the S&D group engage itself in bouncing back after the pandemic, and what are some of the elements of this feminist Europe that you would like to see happening?
Yes, I see this future of Europe with us, with our voices, with our faces. And to do that, we work a lot in the executive board to guarantee an equal representation in all bodies of this conference. We need equal representation in the plenary of the conference. That means that the European Parliament needs to present equality delegation. It was difficult because some right parties like ID and ECR doesn't want to present an equal delegation, but we block it, until have this equal representation. It was the first step. And other important issue for us is to guarantee that the citizens panel needs to guarantee the equal representation. It's so important. We are working now on the composition of the citizens panel, and we insist a lot. This citizens panel needs to reflect the diversity in the European Union, needs to reflect the equal representation between men and women, and needs to reflect the young people, the young voices, and for it, we introduce in the rules to guarantee that 1/3 of this, or each citizens panel, have to be with people, with young people, men and women, between 16 and 25. This is the first step. Now we are working in other tools in this conference, for example, the digital platform, who is an open discussion to organize events, proposals, and this is very important for us, and we need to push for more women participation. We have the information that until now, only a few women are participating in this digital platform. Sita, we need to mobilize our women organization. We need to mobilize the civil society, the women organization to participate in this digital platform, because we need, as I explained in the beginning, our voices and our faces. And we have to insist in other important questions. The COVID-19 crisis have a women face. We suffer a lot this crisis for the different reasons, for the confinement, for the conciliation between personal and professional life, for a lot of issues. And the recovery instrument in this moment, the National Recovery Plan, needs to include the gender dimension. We work in the European Parliament to introduce in the rules this gender dimension. And finally, we had excellent result. The national plans in the recovery instrument needs to understand that the equality is essential and the gender dimension have to be included in all this. Now in the European Parliament, we will do an scrutiny about these national plans, and as a socialist women, we will pay attention to guarantee that the gender dimension will be included.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irache. But as you were mentioning the national level already, you are coming from Spain, and Spain is known for a very vocal and visible feminist scene in recent years, but also in the last months, the movement has seen some backlash. How endangered is the fight for women's rights also on the national level at this point of time? How do you see that from your perspective in your country?
Yeah, we have to be prepared as a progressive women. We have to be prepared because the far right, the extreme right parties had the clear focus against the feminists, against us. They want to have a women in their houses, with their family, without rights. And we cannot accept this situation. We have to be prepared. And women need to have strong voices on the streets to say that we cannot accept this. We need to fight against the extremists, against the far right, against the people who want to cut our rights. We cannot accept that our daughters will be less rights than our mothers. It's impossible to accept this. We are in the 21st century, and we need to guarantee that the next generations will have more rights than us. And it's very important to understand that in this moment, the feminist movement needs to be unity against these extremists and against the far right.
Good.
Thank you very much for this encouraging statement and your feminist stance at this. I hope you stay strong in this. I would like to switch over now to the video that we just already had a slight glimpse into. We will listen to an expert statement by Neil Data. He is the Secretary of the European Parliamentary Forum on sexual and reproductive rights. They have just published an extraordinary study under the title Tip of the Iceberg. Just try to look into it. It is dealing with international anti-gender funding networks. And he will now explain to us how a worldwide illiberal project is making strategic use of an anti-gender agenda and sexual and reproductive health and rights for far-right political gains. So please be so kind and watch this video now.
Hello, I'm Neil Data. I'm the Secretary of EPF, and I'm delighted to have been asked to make a contribution to Make Her Count for Democracy workshop. I'd like to start by recalling a European Parliament resolution that dates back to February 2019 that was focusing on the backlash in women's rights and gender equality in the EU. Back then, that was a very important resolution at its time. However, just a little 2 years later now, what we can see is that it's probably already outdated. The situation in relation to backlash against women's rights and equality has degenerated in several places. Just last October in Poland, we saw that women's human rights, specifically in relation to abortion, were drastically limited, essentially through the judgment of what is an illegitimate constitutional tribunal. And then just this week, we saw that in Hungary, LGBT rights have been instrumentalized by an authoritarian regime which is manipulating this issue to create an imaginary and foreign enemy. And then altogether, in many EU member states, we see that political parties which are openly hostile to women's rights and sexual minorities are doing alarmingly well in opinion polls. Across Europe and beyond, we see how authoritarians are using human rights and sexuality and reproduction as a tool to divide their own societies and also erect imaginary foreign enemies, whether this be gender ideology, George Soros, the European Union, the UN, or other globalists as threats to their own sense of national identity. And doing so, they are undermining their own democracies through small gradual erosions. In short, we're seeing that democracy is being eroded by a modern version of death by a thousand cuts. We need to be lucid about what this means. We're no longer dealing with a backlash, i.e. societies are not reacting to the extension of human rights in certain areas. Instead, we are dealing with an alternative illiberal political project which is making strategic use of human rights and sexuality and reproduction to make political gains. Earlier this week, we released a report entitled Tip of the Iceberg, the Religious Extremist Funders Against Human Rights and Sexuality and Reproduction. In this report, we were able to show how over a 10-year period, over $700 million had poured into Europe specifically to undermine sexual and reproductive rights through regressive abortion laws, anti-LGBT campaigns and referenda, attempts to limit access to contraception and sexuality education, among a spate of many other issues. This $700 million came from three geographic origins. A little over 11% came from the United States. Approximately 26% came from the Russian Federation and ultra-conservative oligarchs close to the Kremlin. But the remaining 2/3, and I emphasize 2/3, came from Europe itself. So from this report, I'd like to share with you three thoughts. First, even if there is a US and Russian component to the funding undermining sexual and reproductive health and rights, it is first of all a European problem funded by European donors, which requires European solutions from European progressives. Second, instead of looking at what is being destroyed, i.e. the backlash, let us also focus on what is being created instead. To echo Pablo Picasso, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. In some EU member states, a whole landscape composed of alternative illiberal civil society, academia, media, legal and political parties and infrastructures have emerged, which are all justifying in some way reducing human rights and democracy. Unfortunately, in many cases, this is thanks to EU funding. Third, we're dealing with something more than normative changes in laws in relation to sexuality and reproduction, where those working against sexuality and reproduction have wider objectives, as we detail in the report. They equally have a hyper-libertarian economic agenda and also illiberal political and geopolitical objectives. So in conclusion, the first thing in understanding how to fight back is understanding the threat that we're facing, and that protecting SRHR, sexual and reproductive health, is really the canary in the mine shaft, and that protecting SRHR is the first step in protecting democracy. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you good luck with the workshop.
Thank you.
We can learn that there is alarming evidence of a worldwide alliance. And what I think we also have to discuss is that it also needs not only action on the national level, but also on the European level to fight back what is going on there with regards of interlinkages in funding, anti-gender, anti-feminist campaigns and activities. And the second thing that is startling is that Neil reminds us that protecting sexual and reproductive human and rights is one of the key issues in order to protect democracy. So in our first session, we would like to bring in some reactions from the political family of the S&D parties. So I would like to invite now a Polish member of the parliament, who is Katarzyna Kotula. She is member of the Sejm, the national parliament in Poland, for her party Wiosna. And she will join us now for a talk. I hope, Katarzyna, you can be seen and heard now. Can you make yourself heard, please?
Yes, hello. Yes, thank you.
Hello. Yes, thank
It
you.
is a great pleasure to
It's
be
a great
present
pleasure
here
to
with such important progressive feminist voices. And I'm coming to you with two messages, I guess, today. I want to share warning messages, but also hope. Looking at the situation that we are right now in Poland, we have to face some questions and talk about how it happened that we are at this situation. But I want to start first with the first message that I have for you. And the message is, what happened in Poland can happen anywhere. Although it might seem impossible, of course, because looking back to 2015, even to the year when the ruling party, PES party, won power, we didn't expect what was coming, what we could face in the upcoming 5 or 6 years. Of course, we knew that the ruling party would do everything to limit women's rights, but we weren't aware of the fact, maybe, that the brain of this operation is really also behind Ordo Iuris, which is the organization that Neil just talked about, right? So we have to be aware of the fact that it's not only the ruling party, it's also the fundamentalist organization, which is so active in Poland, but not only in Poland, with international connections, with a lot of money, with, of course, political connections all over Europe now. And where we are now, 2021, Poland, a country in the middle of Europe with a strict abortion law, with a total abortion law, with dramatic stories of women who cannot get access to abortion, even in the most difficult situations where they are pregnant and they know that their pregnancy has fetus abnormality. And we sometimes in Poland we say that where we are now it's really similar to the reality of the anti-utopian book Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, right? This is the reality of Polish women. So it's the 21st century and Poland is at the very end of the list when it comes to the access of to contraceptives. We now need prescription to receive the day after pill. And you have to imagine how really difficult it is for us to understand that this is our reality. I am an MP from Poland, but I live on the border of Poland and Germany, and just 2 kilometers away from where I live, from the place where I am an MP, women who are my friends, my German friends, have a totally different access to, for example, contraceptives. There is a totally different law. These are my European friends, right? And when they listen to the stories of Polish women, when we are talking about what was happening during the last 6 years in Poland, they really think it's unbelievable, right? But what we are saying is take a closer look at all the processes who are behind what was happening, because it might also happen in your country. The second motto that I want to give today is you will never walk alone. It is the motto of all the protests that swept through Poland the last 6 months, huge, massive protests that were present not only in major Polish cities as it was in 2016, but also in smaller cities, in towns and in villages, really, because all the women in Poland were outraged with the fact that the fundamental rights that they had were taken away from them. But Neil Data talked about, or the jurist talked about this organization with a great founding, with some important political connections. And everybody knows the name of Ordo Juris in Poland now. But when I look back at 2015 and I think of the first massive pro-democratic protests and the first decisions of the ruling party, which was deconstructing democracy and deconstructing the rule of law, I still remember the discussions we had within, even among activists, because I wasn't a full-time politician then yet. And we were talking about whether it really is important to also fight, or how important it is also to fight for women's rights alongside the battle for democracy, right? And not many understood at that point. There were especially, I think, men, politicians, activists who have been active in the political scene for many years. They somehow did not really realize that fighting for women's rights is part of fighting for democracy. It took them a few years. It took the few trials to totally ban abortion in Poland. It took some important decisions that took away our rights, because it was done step by step, of course, right? So every year we faced new changes in law that would bit by bit take our rights away. So it wasn't done all at once, and some people didn't notice that. But now it seems that for all those people who have democracy and rule of law in their hearts, it is obvious that we have to fight for women's rights, that we have to be aware of all the processes that are happening behind the scenes, and especially we have to be aware of such organizations as Ordo Juris. In 2016, the first massive protest and the first trial to put a total abortion ban in Poland, it was Ordo Juris who was responsible for that. They came up with the idea of a law that could even put women to jail for even if they miscarried. And it was, of course, it sparked an outrage and massive protest, and they weren't successful at that point. But that doesn't mean that they stop acting. We know, of course, and we are aware of the fact that they are even stronger now because they have more money, they have more people working for them. And we are definitely aware of the fact that the ruling party, the PES party, is partly doing what they have on their own agenda, but they are partly doing what Ordo Juris has on their agenda, of course. And we believe that Poland, with what was happening in the past 6 years, serves as a certain test bed for reactionary ideas to be exported to other countries. So as I said, what happened in Poland can happen anywhere. And we know that Ordo Iuris as an organization have established connections in many EU member states. The money is pouring to them, and of course, we can see we can pinpoint that some important actions and some important maybe decisions that stood also that we know that Ordo Iuris stands behind them. So in Croatia, it was the Istanbul Convention. In Estonia, it was a referendum on LGBT rights. In Lithuania, it was abortion. So what we are seeing in Poland might be just the beginning of the erosion of fundamental rights through pseudo-legal processes. And definitely first targeting women, of course, then also sexual minorities. And I think we should definitely be concerned. So unless as Europeans, as women, of course, we take some steps and we make some decisions, those dramatic changes that occurred in Poland can happen anywhere. And we need to do everything to uphold democracy and the rule of law. And we need to encourage definitely all those political leaders, women political leaders, all those courageous political leaders that want to fight back against this democratic backsliding, as we are aware that we will be left with no rights if organizations such as Ordo Iuris win.
Thank you, Katarzyna, for giving us this very important insight in how the religious right and the ruling right-wing populist party in Poland is actually an evil alliance when it comes to women's rights, and for giving us this warning, but also for giving us hope. And I hope in our discussions we can still talk about how actually on the European level it would be helpful to draw from the experiences in Poland in order to bridge also to other countries, to build alliances on this very similar but also very worrying developments. And I hope we can discuss about this a bit further. And and also Turkey has drawn out of the Istanbul Convention, and maybe this kind of decisions are luring behind also for other countries in Europe. And that would be a very, very worrying signal to us. So maybe we can talk about this later. So Katarzyna, maybe I might invite you again to join us in the discussion. But for now, as we have a very tight program, I will have to switch over to another input by an expert, if you agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so we would now would like to invite Andrea Petter. She is a professor at the Department of Gender Studies at the Central European University in Budapest. And she has been doing vast research on the issue of how illiberal states function, and specifically with regards to gender equality. Andrea has coined a term of the so-called polypore state, which is kind of a fungus. And this is describing the modus operandi of regimes such as in Poland and in Hungary. And this kind of parasitic fungus feeds on rotting trees, contributing to the decay of this of the very grounds of everything. So I think with regards to protecting democracy, this is a very horrible picture that a parasite fungus is actually feeding on the roots of democracy. So without further ado, I would like to invite the video, and after that we have more time for discussion.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thanks especially to Zita Gurmai, President of the PES Women, and Maria Neutschel, Member of the European Parliament, the President of ASF, the German Social Democratic Women. I'm extremely honored to address this workshop, Make Her Count for Democracy. In the past decade, political scientists have been discussing in great lengths the terminology with which it is possible to understand recent developments in different countries: Hungary, Poland, Serbia, Slovenia, Brazil, the US, and Turkey. With Veronika Grzebelska, we call these states illiberal polypore states based on their common modus operandi. Unlike other political scientists who are admiring these states because of their effectiveness, we argue that the polypore states do not have any original ideas, just taking ideas of others, using them for their own purposes, which is simple self-maintenance. The polypore state is working with three concepts. The first is security. In the public discourse, the state securitizes all possible aspects of life and policy areas, including portraying gender studies and critical intellectuals as threat. The concept of polyporism is useful in spite of its biological connotation to understand the relationship of illiberal states to gender equality. The second is the ideology of familialism. The illiberal state policies are supporting selected, mostly middle-class families, consciously ignoring the value of gender equality. Religion is also used to legitimize heterosexual and nuclear families on the expense of other forms of cohabitations portrayed as existential threat to the community. The third aspect, which is the most important for this conference today, is the founding of parallel institutions to the already existing one, creating a new phenomenon, polypore institutions. In the past decade, these illiberal polypore countries witnessed the booming of women's NGOs, but they are not NGOs, but gongos, having exactly the same profile as already existing NGOs had, but these institutions are serving only the needs of the polypore state. Gender as a symbolic glue has always been in the center of the communication of the illiberal states. Gender is a glue that glues together different actors, movements, and values with the glue of hate and exclusion, while, and that's important, offering an alternative to neoliberalism. The neoliberal neo-patriarchy, to use the concept of Campbell, has had dire consequences for equality politics globally. While it might ostensibly support a narrow and market-oriented version of gender equality, it simultaneously dismantled the welfare state using austerity rhetoric for legitimization, undermined social solidarity, and rejected any structural reforms which are needed to reach genuine equality. The leaders of the populist right present themselves as national remedy against the power of global elites, the voice of the so-called losers of globalization, despite the fact that they themselves are part of the winners. As a nationalist response to the globalized neoliberal democracy, contemporary European illiberalism rests on 6 interconnected ideological pillars: majoritarian nationalism, freedom fighter rhetoric, national capitalism, familialism, anti-genderism, and Euro-Christianity. Familialism, a form of biopolitics, which views traditional family as a foundation of the nation and subjugates individual reproductive and self-determination rights to the normative demand of the reproduction of the nation. This is why during the pandemic, the Polish government tried to further strengthen abortion, Hungary attacked trans rights, and Romania abolished what they call gender ideology. European Union progressives are talking about care and about minimum income. At a certain moment, the two words, the real one and this constructive, polypore, hollow one, will crash. And we can strongly hope that from this clash, the values, and an inclusive future will emerge. Thank you very much for your attention.
So hello again. I hope you can hear me. I couldn't hear the video, but as I know Andrea's work, I can guess that she has been talking about gender as a symbolic glue that glues together different actors and movements and values with the glue of anti-gender hate and exclusion. I think it is very important to have further studies like that study that is undertaken by Andrea and gender studies in Europe being under scrutiny by the right-wing actors as well. And so we need a lot of support for this kind of studies. And FES has also done a study on right-wing populist movements in several European countries under the title of Triumph of Women. Please look into that on our website if you have access, and you will find interesting country studies on this. But before we talk about this, I would like to invite our next speaker. As I understood, now Elke Ferner is joining us, and Elke is a member of the executive board of PES Women, but she has also been a long-standing member of the board of the ASF in Germany, and only recently became the president of UN Women in Germany. Hello, Elke. Can you hear me, and can you join us, please?
Stephanie, I can hear you.
I cannot hear you so well. Yeah. Now I can see you. Very good. Elke, our experts and the colleagues have already given us much of the input about the current situation on women's rights in Europe. And now from a political standpoint, from where you stand with regards to the ongoing elections in Germany, how do you see Germany standing there in their fight against anti-democratic and anti-equality forces at home as ahead of the next election campaign? I think we have quite a few things to tackle with. Give us your 3 cents about the current situation, please.
Thank you, Stephanie. I apologize to switch to German because I was not prepared to speak in English. So, wir haben in Deutschland natürlich 16 Jahre lang zwar eine Frau an der Spitze.
Well, of course, it is true that we've had a lady as the head of government in Germany for the past 16 years, but unfortunately this hasn't really changed a great deal. And we have to see that anti-feminism is also on the rise in Germany. It's sad to say, but we have to admit it. I think it is it's a matter of respect whether fundamental rights such as women's rights are enforced and are respected.
Help me to also listen to what Elke is saying, because I cannot hear what she's saying, and we want to have a discussion. Can you please help?
You cannot hear me at all, either in German nor in English, isn't it? Okay.
Okay. So I'll continue in the meantime. Well, women's rights are fundamental rights and they cannot be put into perspective or relativized, of course. We can see that any state that starts undermining women's rights, that this is the start of the end. They are in a downward spiral because, after all, it's about everyone's democratic rights, and women's rights are the first to fall in many countries, and this is something we must not forget in Germany either. What is really important is that women are involved in any decisions on a fair basis, on an equal basis. This is why we are promoting a women's quota for executive and managerial positions. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party, CDU, has always stepped on the brake so far, and they've tried to block any progress that's been achieved to the greatest possible extent. But in spite of the resistance of the Conservative Party, we've managed to introduce a women's quota for supervisory boards and for the boards of directors for companies as of a certain size. and this has now been enshrined in law. So at least we've got a minimum participation for women now in leadership positions. But this is not enough. We need gender mainstreaming in all sectors, in all areas, and above all, we need to have equal rights for women in all political areas. We are facing a backlash caused by the pandemic, and we will not be able to catch up on this backlash, and we will not be able to make these sustainable development goals by 2030.
To read your lips, but although we know each other well, I'm still not good at reading lips. But I'm very sure that you have made your point here, and also I would like to thank you for jumping in, as Liliane Ploemen, who had been announced earlier, I think is not with us. And please, if there is anything else you would like to share with us, maybe the last thing would be my question: if you have 3 wishes to make her count for democracy, is there something that you would put first on your wish list? And which would be second and which would be third?
Ja, das erste ist, dass Frauenrechte generell geachtet werden.
First wish on my wish list would be that women's rights will be respected in general. Sexual and reproductive rights shall be respected, and women should be able to live free of violence. That's my wish number 1. Number 2, well, we are currently talking about the recovery plans. But above and beyond the recovery plans, we should introduce a gender impact assessment. It needs to be perfectly clear that no single measure can be decided that neglects gender equality. That is to say, any measure has to account for gender equality. Otherwise, there will be no money, no measures. And thirdly, we should have an equal participation of women at all levels, in parliaments, in governments, any decision centers, any place where decisions are taken for the entire society, including women, children, and girls.
Thank you very much, Elke, for your statement, and thanks to all speakers and also those who prepared the videos for this important talk, lunch talk. I'm very sorry if there have been technical problems. This is always with us during these pandemic times, but I think it is soon over. So now for the closing remarks, I would like to invite the very important personality, which is European Commissioner for Equality in Europe, which is Helena Dalli. I hope you can hear us and hope I can hear you. Helena, are you with us? And I would like to invite you for your closing statement right now.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? You can. I can see Elke doing this. So. Hi, Elke. So, well, democracy and fundamental rights, as we all know, are intrinsically linked, and they are the foundation.
I don't know whether you also have a standstill now?
What's a standstill? Can I go on? Yes, okay.
Go.
So I was saying that democracy and fundamental rights are intrinsically linked, and they are the foundations of the European Union and values we strongly defend as a political family. So democracy can only exist if the rights and voice of everyone are respected and protected. As we meet here today, these same European democratic values are under pressure and challenged by some forces within and outside the EU. I am alarmed, really, at the growing attacks on women's rights and the levels of violence and discrimination targeting LGBTI people across Europe are truly unacceptable. The backsliding in some member states threatens to reverse the hard-won progress Europe has made in recent years. So we must keep insisting that women and men, girls and boys, in all their diversity, should be free to live their life with whom they love and with the family that they choose. They should have the same opportunities to thrive socially and economically and participate and lead as equals. Achieving gender equality and empowering women and girls is vital for building fair and inclusive democracies. To guarantee such democracy, we need to make the most of human talent and develop adequate policies that reflect the needs of a diverse population. Women must have an equal share, representation, and voice in politics and public debate. There is progress when political will is shown. The Commission President has made a case in point by composing a gender-balanced college, prioritizing equality policies, and making equality for the first time a standalone portfolio. But while we set an example, disparities across Europe persist when we look at women's representation in national parliaments, for instance. Action is necessary on all fronts to encourage women to participate to public life. And I thank PES Women heartily and ASF for your continued support in this. The EU gender equality strategy includes measures to break down the barriers that exist in the form of prejudices against women in decision-making positions and stereotypes on gender roles and women's leadership abilities. EU standards on work-life balance and the proposal for binding pay transparency measures will enable women to thrive in their careers. Also, for women who aspire to a career in politics. I have also been working with colleagues on gender mainstreaming in sectoral EU policies to ensure that both women's and men's perspectives are fully taken into account in all stages of policy making. Later this year, I will present a proposal for legal measures to combat gender-based violence and domestic violence, both online and offline. And we are looking at extending the list of EU crimes to cover hate speech and hate crime. These actions will be crucial to help pushing for progress for women's rights and gender equality and for guaranteeing a union of equality. A union of equality which can only flourish when a healthy democracy makes her count and is an LGBTI freedom zone. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Applause for your statement, and I understood that Zita is taking the floor right now.
So of course, it's a great privilege to see so many amazing sisters and, of course, supportive brothers all around Europe, because I would say women make her count when men let us count. So let's be very, very clear. I would say this whole crisis showed that there is still a lack of equality, and I go further on gender equality. But this is the first time in history that we have a commissioner who deals with women's rights and gender equality. And Helena can tell us how important fight we did for the last 20 years within the progressive family to achieve this goal. So I'm really, really happy that you have with us, and of course you do the utmost to fulfill the criteria of women's rights and gender equality. And of course I know that you also support to have a ministerial configuration, because it's high time that gender equality ministers sit together and do decisions. And I really hope that Louis Michel, whom I would understand should get some lessons what gender equality and feminism means, and to share the sofa when the president of the commission cannot get a proper seat, he could give his chair or leave the room together with her. But let's make it as a good exercise for him to let us well listened, because I strongly believe make her count when we allow to have a proper fight. And as we are going to have the future of Europe debate, we have to keep women's rights and gender equality as high on the agenda. So I really would like to wish you all the best. And Stephanie Ellis, I would love to hug you, of course, with Katarina and with Helena and Elke and all my other friends who are in the virtual sphere. Let's really hope that we can have a conference soon when we can be together in a physical sphere. But I'm sending a strong hug, and I showed you, I put on my LGBTIQ dress just to explain that every human being counts in Europe, and it's high time for Orban to understand we need to stop Orban. Thank you very much.
So I think we are offline now.
Yes. Okay.